Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 3 of Dukes on the Pod. I'm the host, JD Dijamco, and the other host is Chris Lopez. Chris, how are you?
JD, doing well. Ready for episode 3.
Awesome. So we haven't spoken in a couple days. You know, what's new? What's going on in your world?
Just kind of staying at it. Just staying on the academic monitoring. Working with our IT department to make sure that we're staying on kind of the heartbeat of this thing, kind of like I've been stressing on for the last 2 episodes, and kind of just seeing how our student athletes are doing as far as getting into online classes, seeing how they're adjusting on more of a professional end, trying to see how I can do on the Photoshop end of our job, and seeing if I can improve on that. But other than that, just kind of the everyday grind, just trying to stay at this thing. How about yourself?
Cool. Yeah. No, just doing different things. Working with our coaches on the recruitment end. The engine's not going to stop for us, so we just want to be prepared for when we get back. So. Coaches have been great. Chris, I'll say this about, the work you're doing behind the scenes with the academic stuff. Our students have been reaching out, with concerns and questions, and vice versa with the faculty. So it looks like everybody's, really honing in on their academics right now, which is a good thing. We don't want anyone to slip up on that end just because we've moved from on campus to online. So, Chris, thank you for your work, thus far, and we're very grateful for it.
No, I appreciate you saying that, and I mean it's a credit to our student athletes and our professors, student services, advising, one-stop enrollment. It's a credit to really everyone on campus and our athletic department, yourself, Deb, Maria. So I appreciate you saying that. Unfortunately, though, I got the trivia question for the day, and this one is probably going to stump you. So we'll transition right into that.
Cool. Sounds good. I'm ready.
All right, here we go. So at the conclusion of the baseball season, all right, so we played 13 games, 10-1, with 1 game still had to be completed against Union County.
Right.
All right, so 13 games into this season, there were 4 baseball players with at least 10 RBIs or more on this season. All right, 10 RBIs or more on this season. Can you name at least 3 of the 4?
I'll go Christian Lutz.
That's correct.
Corral Gonzalez.
That's correct.
Oh, that was a shot in the dark.
Need one more.
James Costanzo.
That's incorrect. But you get one more guess. You get one more guess at this thing.
Jake Myers.
That's incorrect as well.
Oh my God! Who was it?
So,
if you say Jaquez, I'm gonna get ticked off.
Yep. So Jaquez was in there. So your top 4. So you had the 1 and 2.
Yep.
Corral Gonzalez and Christian Lutz were tied at 13 RBIs. And then tied at 12 also is Jaquez Colon and Luke Gutos.
All right, here's why I didn't want to say Luke Gutos. Is I didn't want to get mesmerized by his 3-run home run in game 1. And I didn't want to get so excited. I didn't want to say because he hit really well in the first series, he probably hit well for the rest of the season. Mm-hmm. Jaquez, there was, and he's going to kill me for this. Jaquez had a couple big situations where he had runners in scoring position, second and third, and he didn't come through. So I just made that assumption that it was. I just made that assumption that it carried over. But,
yeah. So all right.
Shame on me.
First question of the year that stumped you.
Yep.
Jaquez, just key point to this. Jaquez had a base clearing triple that scored at least 3 on it, or I'm sorry, at least 2 on it.
It's just one of those things where I didn't want to get mesmerized by one swing. So Jaquez and I go back and forth. He's always angry because I'm taller than him. But shout out to Jay Quez. He's a great player, and we're looking forward to see what he does in the future.
Yep. So I guess me and you are tied. We're
1-1. 1-1.
Yep, here we go.
All right. So we've got a very, very special guest here. And it's our men's basketball coach, Darren Stalling. And before we formally introduce him, I'd just like to point out just what an amazing career he's had up until this point. He started, I won't put the number, I'll just say a few years ago. He started out on the men's basketball staff at Paulsboro High School, and that pretty much kick-started one of the best coaching careers in our area. Moved on to Delsea High School, then to Williamstown High School, and he ultimately landed at Stockton, or back then Stockton College, now Stockton University. During his time at Stockton, Stockton women's basketball experienced one of its greatest stretches in program history, culminating in a pair of NCAA tournament appearances. After Stockton, Darren Stalling filled in the role as a men's basketball head coach at Cumberland County College, now RCSJ-Cumberland, and the rest, as they say, is history. In his first 2 years, Coach Stalling has clinched a berth in the postseason, and in his first year reached the Region 19 Final Four. And we are pleased to welcome the future winningest basketball coach at Cumberland, Mr. Darren Stalling. Darren, how are you?
How you doing, guys?
Great to have
Coach,
you on.
Thanks so much for coming on.
I don't know about being the winningest coach anytime soon, because that means I will have to coach a long time, but I don't know how many more years I have. So
hey, we hope to keep you on for a long time, and so
we're gonna speak this thing into existence.
For sure. Coach, just to lead off, we've got a few questions for you, but the question that I feel like you've been asked a few times, and everybody else, how are you dealing with everything with the virus and whatnot?
Well, it's a little nutty right now. I mean, I teach at Delsea High School, and we're on spring break, which I find very unusual because we've been on spring break for a month. Seems like
right.
I feel bad for our seniors. Missing out on prom,
Sure.
Senior trip, and their graduation. Even my own daughter's graduating from college next month, and she can't walk in her graduation ceremony. So, that's a little devastating, I guess, for this generation to be dealing with. But, for myself, I'm just trying to keep myself busy. I watch a lot of TV, a lot of Netflix. That's
Sure.
for certain. I've gone through the series Ozark. I'm in the third season.
Oh,
I've been just like binging on this thing. I can't stop watching it. So now, since things are getting worse, with everything going on, and who knows if we're going to go back to school or things going to get back to normal in the next 2 or 3 weeks. I have to slow down the episode because I'm almost finished.
Yeah.
So I had to ride it out.
Stretch it out, Coach.
Yeah, I have to. So I was doing like 3 a day, so now I'm down to like 1 a day. So
right.
I'm doing well with that. So other than that, I mean, just relaxing and spending time with the family. That's it.
Sure. Your willpower is a heck of a lot stronger than mine. I've already finished 2 shows. So
he mentioned his daughter too, Layla, one of our most dedicated Dukes basketball fans. There's no doubt about that.
Oh yeah, there is. It's a funny thing because when we're at home and before the game starts, like Coach Holloway, my assistant coach Ed Holloway, will say, "Hey, where's Coach at? Like, there's no ruckus over there in the stands. He don't think the game should be started until Layla gets there.
Yeah, right. There's a couple times where in the middle of a game, an official will look at me like, "Hey, buddy, crowd control." And I just want to say, you're going to have to go over there. I'm not going over there.
Yeah, that's a lot to handle there. Especially when she's told the truth. Usually that's 95% of the time.
Yeah,
that's right.
So,
that's right.
But I'll say this. She says about 99.9% of the things we want to say. So that's why I let it go.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, she sparks the bench up. The guys are like, And like even like Coach Miller, John was saying, "Hey, listen, Layla's more loud than you guys, and she's sitting across the gym. You know what I mean? Like, why are you guys that loud? You know?" So, but
no, that's good stuff. Yeah, Layla. I hope she listens to this episode, and
yeah, she will.
We definitely appreciate her, and again, she won't hear a peep from me. But that I don't mean that to empower her. I'm just saying you're not going to hear a peep from me.
She's already been removed from one contest already. Yeah.
That wasn't our gym, so somebody else had to do it.
Hey, I couldn't even fight it because if she was in our gym, I might have had her thrown out. You know what I
mean? So, but Coach, to kind of get things started, what made you get into coaching, and how did you get into it? A lot of us don't, kind of just fall into it, or it's something that's staying close to with your particular sport. So how'd you get into it?
Well, I was living in West Deptford, and I wanted something to do. I was working at a mental health agency, and there was a one ad for a assistant coach in Paulsboro, and it didn't say what level it was. So I applied, and I met with the head coach, Tino Monti, at the time, and the position didn't pay a whole lot, and it was for middle school, and so I said, okay, what the heck, you got to get started somewhere. So I got very fortunate because I had a good athlete, good player, Kevin Harvey at the time, who wound up going to high school and being probably one of the best athletes in South Jersey's ever seen, and I'm coaching this kid in middle school, and he was so head and shoulders by everybody else because of his athletic ability. But I coached middle school for a few years, and those kids I had my first 2 years, because my second year there, coaching middle school, we went undefeated. We won 18-0, and that was Kevin's 8th grade year.
Wow!
And then 4 years later, 10 of those kids, we had 13 kids on the high school team, varsity team, and 10 of those kids. I was the first coach in middle school, and now we're playing for the school's first state championship, and we win. So it was something. I mean, just the ride in itself to get that far, and to watch those kids grow. I mean, they were kids, 12, 13 years old. Now they're grown men and about to graduate from high school, and I stayed with them that whole time. I mean, I just couldn't leave them. But it was fun. I mean, it was fun, and then I never thought I would leave there and just get into it. But then I started working at Delphi, and I started coaching there, and then went to Williamstown. And, and actually after coaching at Delphi for a while, actually it was Paulsboro, because I went back. I coached girls for a year.
Okay.
So I had for 5 years I didn't coach at all. And I was absolutely miserable.
Right.
I miss it that much. And my brother-in-law said, listen, you got to go back and coach because you're not going to be the same. So I did. I went back to Paulsboro, got, coaching the girls, did that. And then, the opportunity started coming my way. Delphi came up, excuse me, and then assistant coach, and then became a head coach. And then I went to Williamstown as an assistant coach under real good coach Karen Dillmore. And then, lo and behold, because of me coaching at Williamstown, I met a young lady who played at Washington Township, and she wanted to go on to Stockton. And I saw her father a couple months after I decided I wasn't going back to Williamstown, and he told me about the position at Stockton. So that came open, and I applied, and I had met Coach Fussman before out, at games and stuff like that. I didn't really know him, but I followed his whole career because he's an Atlantic County guy. I'm an Atlantic County guy. So watching him coach when I was a teenager, because he had a really good player, Valeria Jones, who was the first female to score 2,000 points in South Jersey. So everybody went to see her play. So everybody knew who Joe Fussner was.
Right.
So, worked on him for 6 years and learned a great deal. I guess the way I coach right now is I try to do the things that Joe does, because the college game is totally different than high school or middle school. I mean, it's not even close. The preparation that you put in, the time that you put into it, the dedication you have to have for it, and that's just the games. That's not the recruiting side of it, or keeping the kids in line, the players in line, or having your coaches engaged in what you're doing. So running a program is tough, but through all what I just told you guys, I've worked for like 7 head coaches in 20 something years, so I've learned something from each and every one of them along the way and try to implement that to what I do now.
Right. No, Coach, thank you for sharing. I think it's interesting. You look around at head coaches and you ask about philosophies and things of that nature, and they always bring up little bits and pieces of folks that they've worked under or they've worked with, and every so often, a student will get frustrated and say, "Why is he the way?" I said, "Look, man, he's been around the block. He's seen everything. So he or she has seen everything at this point. So they just know what is wrong and what's right, or something that doesn't look right, and you're trying to fix it." So
you're absolutely right, because I working with Fussner, as long as I did, he's an old school guy. I mean, you're not going to get anything but that out of Joe, and he's the same way with everybody. And there are days where, he's very direct and he's telling you what needs to be done. He wasn't smoothing it out and being very nice about it.
Sure. No, yeah. It's like, direct is the only way to go.
Exactly. This has to be done. And I took that, growing up with my parents were strict. I mean, so taking that from Joe was nothing. And then I always said to myself, and I would always say to some players, when someone comes at you that particular way, and they're that very direct, they not only want it done, but they're trying to teach you something as well.
Exactly.
And that's what I took from him. Did we get along all the time? Yeah, we did. Did we have some times where we disagreed? Yeah, we did. Right. we had a couple of those. Mm-hmm. But and sometimes I won, sometimes I lost.
Right.
But the losing to a guy who's coached for 40 some odd years, and the experience that he's had, you take the loss and you say to yourself, well, if he's saying no, there's got to be a reason why he's saying no.
Right.
You can't walk away and be angry and come back the next day and try to plead your case again, because, like I said, he's an old school guy. He's not budging. Right. So, so I really enjoyed my time, with him, and now that I'm where I am, and I have him. He watches all the games. Sometimes he scouts some games for me, and I gotta tell you, if we play bad, the next day, the text message is normally not very nice, And,
Coach, you made a good point there. Sorry to cut you off. When you talked about a coach kind of coaching you up, motivating you, that's a good thing. I always tell student athletes, when a coach isn't doing that anymore, that's when you should be worried. When a coach isn't looking your way anymore, when he isn't getting on you a little bit, you're probably on the back of his mind at that point. So it's a good thing when a coach is still worried about you and still trying to coach you up.
Yeah, he especially with the recruiting, and I mean, I wouldn't learn anything about recruiting if Joe didn't step in and told me what to look for and things like that. And there were times that he would tell me, don't go after that kid, or, yes, go after that kid, and things like that. It got to the point that he got so comfortable with me doing my job that, he told a kid one day, her parents, he hadn't seen this girl play. And the parents said, well, when are you going to come out and see her play? And Joe told the parents, listen, Darren's already seen him play, and I trust his, what he saw, and that was big. That took some years to get that from him. You know what I mean? You weren't getting the first 6 months out of Joe, but 3 years in, that's a whole different ballgame,
Right.
And it's the work ethic that he saw me putting into it and everything. And I remember one day he went into the South Jersey Hall of Fame, and we went to the dinner, and he spoke about me and other assistant coach Jess Sartorio, and he said about me that I was an avid recruiter, and I didn't know what the heck avid meant, so I thought he was saying something bad. I was like, what the hell is he talking about? So I came home and I asked my wife. I said, Joe said I was an avid recruiter. I don't know what that means. She said, it means enthusiastic, Darren. I said, oh, okay. So I didn't want to look dumb at the dinner. Like, Coach, what does that mean?
That's great. Yeah, we've seen Fussner around the gym, man. He's a joy to have in the gym, and just knowing that someone like him is assisting in some way is a big plus for us.
Yeah, I told my wife one day. I said, having him in your corner, having someone to, I got used to being, talked to a certain way or just being coached by him a certain way. And I always say coached by because I always used to tell the girls, well, he's this way, he's that way. Yeah, but guess what? I work under him too. So when you get, I may get
everybody gets it
later on. Yeah. Everybody's getting it, honey. You know what I'm saying? So he spreads the wealth. I mean, he's not a person who's just gonna just one and not everybody else. So
So moving on. So I know there's some uncertainty at Stockton towards the end there. So what initially drew your interest to Cumberland, and ultimately what led you to applying, then accepting the position? And why we ask is, again, there was some uncertainty at Stockton, some transition, but that that never really means that you just take the next job that's open. So what drew your interest and what led to the acceptance?
Well, I think for the most part, it was basically Joe's suggestion in a way. I did apply for the job when Joe was retiring a couple of years ago, and he wanted me to be his successor. Unfortunately, it didn't happen that way.
Sure.
And he pushed, about looking at other jobs. And I feel like this: if he didn't feel I wasn't ready, one, he wouldn't have told me to apply for the job and went to bat for me, and two, he wouldn't have, when this opened up in Cumberland County, he wouldn't have told me to pursue that. And it just wasn't him. It was our men's coach, Scott Bittner, who's a St. Augustine grad like you and I, JD, looking out for it. and also our head boys basketball coach at Delsey High School, Tom Freeman, who was totally shocked that I didn't get the position after coaching with Joe as long as I did. And we were at a retirement dinner, and I told him I didn't get the job. And the next day, he said, that night, he said, come over tomorrow. I want to give you this website, look about some jobs and everything. And he even heard that the position may be coming open. So the next day, I met with Tommy, and we went over some things. And he said, look, it's posted. I think it just got posted. And then I applied and everything. So, and I had a good recommendation from Joe Masters, who was our trainer at Cumberland, and Joe was also a part-time trainer at Stockton for the years I was there. So I kind of forgot all about that when everything was going on. But Coach Fussner reminded me about that. So Coach, I contacted Joe Masters, and he talked to Mr. Gorman at the time, who was our AD, and it happened. It was a little strange after coaching females for such a long time, and I knew coming into this, and this is why, having someone like Fussner is so good, I knew there was going to be a different type of the way you have to coach against these young men, opposed to coaching young females. And, I know they're going to be bigger than me. It's not like years ago when I started coaching in Paulsboro, I was bigger than half the kids I coached. A little different now. And, but you have to kind of take the approach that you want what's best for them, number one. And I come with the mentality is that to these young men is that I'm going to tell you the truth. That's what I base everything on with them. It's just telling them the truth. If it's about life in general, if it's about your grades, about your ability to play, your social, what you're doing, and stuff like that. If I'm going to be involved in your life and coach you, then I think I want to have some kind of say. But with that being said, my thing with them is always tell them the truth, and rather if they like it or they don't. And again, that's a Fussner thing. I mean, that's not the thing I just brought up. I mean, that's how it is. And I think that's the best way to handle, especially young men in this generation.
Sure. No. The one thing that stuck out to me was, Coach Fussner wouldn't have suggested it, or anybody would have suggested it if you weren't ready. And Darren, since you joined, I don't think we could have gotten anybody better. You were certainly ready to take the position. And
I appreciate that.
I personally, I learned something from you every day. I love watching your practices, and I can assure you that you don't let anything go.
Right. No, but I can't beat Union County for some reason. That's like my only downfall. I've beaten everybody. I've beaten everybody we played, but Union County. I mean, it's a thorn in my side right now.
Coach, you've been since your first day on campus. I think you've been big on how you handle yourself on the court, off the court. It's important to you how you handle yourself in the community, not only in our gym and our campus, but really how you handle yourself, whether you're from Bridgeton, Millville, Vineland, Pennsville, Woodstown, whatever the case may be. It's always kind of interests me. Is there someone that you look at in the NBA, someone past or present, maybe not skill level, but how they handle themselves on and off the court, that you kind of look at and you say, hey, that is someone that if we had to put a blueprint to our program, that's someone we want our program to be about?
Wow, you know what? There's quite a few, I would say, because I'm a little older than you guys, so I can go back to like the early '70s when I really started watching basketball.
Coach, we're catching up with these reruns, so you can't hold that over our heads anymore.
That's true. Right now, you should be on the '82 finals, I guess. Right now. I would think. I grew up in an era that basketball, to me, started to get important to me after the '79 NCAA championship. And, of course, that's when Magic and Bird played against each other. To me, basketball became totally different at that stage. Those are two guys that I have the utmost respect for. I think their battle, not just in college, but their whole career through the '80s was memorable. Like, there was a stretch that's all you talked about was Magic and Bird, and you didn't talk about one without talking about the other one.
Right.
It wasn't just like, okay, Magic's good, we know he's good, well, Bird's good. Yeah, no, these guys, there was a time, I guess, every other year, other than the Philadelphia 76ers won the championship in '83, that every other championship in the first 7 years of the '80s was won by the Lakers or the Celtics.
Wow.
And that was basically because of Bird and Magic.
Yep.
Those are two guys that I put on my top five without a doubt. But I would definitely, just the way they carried themselves, and not just that. Now they've been in the front office and everything, and they've coached, future Hall of Fame. Now they've been in the front office when they had future Hall of Famers in their program. Like Larry Bird was at Indiana,
right,
as a general manager. He had Reggie Miller. Like, you can't go wrong with that. Magic was at the Lakers, and you had Kobe and Shaq. You can't go wrong with that. So these guys knew talent because of who they were. And I remember watching something on them on HBO a few years ago. One of the reporters from Boston that did something on them, where it was something. She wrote a book and about their whole relationship. And just watching that, not that I didn't already know, but to me, basketball, in my opinion, didn't start to get to where it is right now without Magic and Bird.
Okay. Yeah.
Sure.
Wow.
and it's funny, back in the '80s when those guys were, winning their championships, no one complained about, it's always the Lakers or the Celtics. Just, now
you hear like, that.
Yeah, exactly.
You want to see that.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just what it was. I mean, who cares if anybody else got there? We want to see Magic and Bird. It was like, Ali fighting Joe Frazier.
Yep.
Every year.
I still don't understand it when people are like, it's going to be the Warriors and Cavs again. Well, back when, they were doing that. I'm like, I don't care. I want to see LeBron go up against, Curry and Durant and Thompson and all those guys like that. If they're the two best teams, I'd rather watch them play a 14-game series. I don't really, I don't really care.
And when you look at that everything, with those guys, the back and forth years that, it was hard for either one of those two franchises to win back-to-back championships. I mean, Lakers finally did it in the late 80s. Right. But like I said, the first 5 or 6 years, 7 years, they were going at each other's throats. Like,
I'd rather get that than, have one team. Like when the Magic made the finals that year, against Kobe, like you knew Kobe was going to win. It's like, come on.
Yeah.
At least, when you put two really just premier teams up against each other or just two incredible athletes, against each other, you're at least going to be entertained and it's going to be a legitimate game. So,
I just think that they just changed the game. Like I said, you have a 6'8" point guard, Magic Johnson, and you have a 6'9" shooting forward, small forward, Larry Bird, and who could do everything.
Yeah. So, no, that's pretty interesting. One of the last questions we have here is, besides the wins, what, in your opinion, is the best aspect of coaching?
I guess I don't know.
One. Yeah.
Well, yeah, it is. I think I got to tell you, recruiting to me is important, and I enjoy it. And now I'm at the point where I'm enjoying it, whereas my assistant coaches are doing a really excellent job of recruiting, but they're also learning the ways to do it the way that I did. And to me, that's the biggest point, because without that work ethic of getting the kids, you're not going to have a program. You can pick and choose what you think is best, what's going to fit the style that you coach.
Right.
So, of course, everybody knows that I'm not really big on the three ball, but, getting to the basket is what our offense is really centered around. So when I go recruiting, that's what I try to find. Excuse me. Guards who can penetrate, bigs who could, play block to block and maybe even step out and shoot a mid-range and things like that. So I try to put a lot of work into that, more or less, because I realized, kind of like what you said earlier, JD, with the success we had at Stockton, it was basically because of the recruiting we were doing at the time and bringing the players in along with what we already had, and mixing that together, and it worked well. So I was told when I got the position by my assistant athletic director, Linda Yost, that recruiting is 90% of this job.
Yep.
So 10%. So the other 10% you got to squeeze in there: scouting, uniforms, schedule, practice time. You know what I mean? All that kind of stuff. That's the other 10%. But again, if you don't have the players to do that, you can't do the other 10%. So exactly. I kind of agree with what she said, and so it's major, and my coaches are learning, very well in terms of what to look for, and we talked earlier from the broadcast about one recruit we're probably going to lose because he went somewhere else, and they were like, well, I said, hey, it happens.
Absolutely,
it happens. I mean, you know what, this is why you get as many as you can. So that if one goes, you say, hey, well, and was he a good player? Sure, he was a good player. We wouldn't recruit him if he wasn't a good player. That's, but the bottom line is, you're not going to make them all happy. You're not going to keep them all. And that just allows maybe one or two and maybe three players to step up next season to get the time that young man probably would have received,
sure,
if he had stayed. Yeah. So, hey, you just got to move on. So, yeah, I think that's takes up a lot of time.
Yeah.
Just going to see kids and keeping track of them and things like that, and more or less trying to sell not just the player itself, but the family, and getting to know them and know that when we take your son or daughter, whoever you're recruiting, away from you, that we're going to have their best interest at heart.
Right. No, Coach, I think we share the same idea that as far as coaching, recruiting is my favorite thing to do. One, you kind of go into some odd places to go see kids. There was I think I tell this story all the time. The one time I almost got locked at Pleasantville High School. Just things like that where you go out and then it's seeing the kid, or I hate calling them kids because they don't think they are, but I think they are. You go see a 16, 17-year-old kid and you kind of try to tell them like, hey, this, if you go here and you do this and that, you will receive this. And
right.
The best part is seeing it 2 years down the line and they actually achieve it. That's the storybook part. The real part is, like you said, you can't do much if you don't have talent. So
yeah.
I think if you put the time in, and you certainly do, as does your staff, you put the time in on the recruiting trail, it makes coaching practice and developing game plans and all that stuff that much easier, because you got the talent to run whatever the heck you want to run. So,
that's absolutely, you're right. That's absolutely. And I learned a lesson years ago with Coach Foster. We were recruiting a really good player, Leah Mendola, from North Jersey. And, Leah was very interested in us going into her senior year, and she played AAU for a team up there. But anyway, we saw her play at Stockton in the AAU tournament. We were, she's a nice player, and we got her out for a visit. But it took me 11 months to secure this kid. And, and it wasn't all her fault or my fault. She, or her school was in North Jersey. It was just one of those years where it snowed so much in January and February that every time we wanted to go to see her, it would snow. We couldn't get to North Jersey. So, we finally went to see her play, and we actually saw her play like 4 times in 10 days.
Wow.
Yeah. And we really wanted the kid. But, there were other people. The fact that we weren't able to see her as much because of our distance, there were other schools locally, North Jersey schools and stuff like that. They were looking at her, and I remember going to see her play with Coach one night, and they in the state tournament, and he says on the way home, we're not going to get her. And I said, well, I think we're going to get her. I need a little more time. And he said, look, you're running out of time. You're running out of time. It's been 11 months. I mean, how long do you want? And I'm like,
Right.
But through some convincing down the Parkway that night, he kind of gave in, and Leah came down and had a great career and probably the best recruit I ever got. And, I guess, Joe will probably thank me in private, probably not in public, that I did that. I went, not sort of went against him, but, I saw something and he saw it too. But again, it might have been just one of those moments that he was seeing how far I was willing to go to get a kid like that.
Right.
And I mean, it was, I use that story a lot, because again, I didn't want to go against him, and I kind of knew, my time could have been used at other recruits.
Right.
And I thought Leah was worth it, and Joe knew I thought Leah was worth it. And he knew Leah was worth it. She comes down and she scores 1,000 points and breaks 2 Stockton school records, and I think she started 82 consecutive games. I mean,
wow.
So yeah, it was worth it. It was worth it.
Absolutely.
It was worth it.
All right, Coach. We're gonna end it with our round of 5. So what we do is we just ask 5 random questions, and we'll kind of have everybody answer. Chris and myself will answer as well. So
yep.
Okay. Sure.
So first question: the worst loss in your playing/coaching career?
Is that just a player and a coach, or just
whichever is the worst?
Well, JD, I think you know the answer to that question. That was the Brookdale game last year. Our first Brookdale game. And you played the defending national champs and number 1 team in the country, and you lose by 1. You go to people and you say, "Oh, man, you really battled." Then you give them the offset about what really happened. Yeah, then we missed 17 free throws. that was devastating. And I appreciate you being there, JD, because of course Coach Miller couldn't be there because his daughter was getting married. But so you saw firsthand.
Brutal.
Exactly. Yeah, it was brutal. So, I mean,
short.
A little, behind the curtain there, I really wanted to win so I can go back and tell people my basketball coaching records 1-0.
I remember you saying
So I didn't even tell anybody I was coaching that day because we lost. But if we won, you would have heard about it.
But I think that something I took from that loss though, that I said to myself after that loss when I got home, and I sat with Layla because everything goes through Layla when you get home. And I said, you know what? I said, we're going to have a good season. If those guys can come back and play that team that well on their home court,
right?
This early in the year, what are we going to be like in February? And sure enough, we were good in February. Yeah,
we were pretty good. So, Chris, what do you got? Worst loss?
Worst loss. I think I might have touched on this in episode 1, but probably Senior League World Series. We lost in the semifinals to St. Nicholas Aruba to go to the World Championship. So that'll always be number 1. But how about you, JD?
Mine. Look, it was 2014. My dream, and unfortunately we won it in 19. But my dream was to win a national championship, and we reached in 2014 in Tyler, Texas. And I'm sure we've all felt this way. You lose a game like that, and you think you're never going to go back. And that was a crushing thing. Like just hopping on the plane ride home and just thinking, it's a 6-hour flight. So you got you got to get to the airport early.
Yeah.
You got to sit in the terminal.
Oh, yeah.
Then you got to fly.
It's a lot of time for it to marinate.
Right. And then we flew into Newark. We didn't fly into Philly, so we flew back into Newark, and then we had to take the bus ride from Newark. So it was like 10 hours of just, hey, you're never gonna make it back. You're never gonna, that initial thought where that was it. You missed your chance. So that was the worst in many aspects. So
no doubt.
So let's go to the flip side, the greatest win. Coach, what do you got?
I have a couple. I mean, I won the state championship in Paulsboro back in '96. Again, like I said earlier, watching those young men who I coached, all the way through up to high school. Now they're juniors and seniors when they were 7th and 8th grade. But that game, and I'm going back to Brookdale when the regional quarterfinals last year, we knocked them out so they couldn't defend. I mean, and then beat them on their floor. That was great. It was a totally different from the game in November, and I think we were a different team and we were a lot more focused, and we hit our free throws. So that was
that helped.
That was important. But at least you could say, I guess you can walk around and say, hey, we were the team that knocked off the defending national champs. I mean, that's the thing that you take away from that. I mean, and you can walk around with your chest out or whatever the situation. A win's a win. I just want to advance. But they were just someone who was just in our way. I mean, either we beat this team or we advance, or we lose, and they get an opportunity now to continue on to try to defend their national championship.
Mm-hmm.
Sure. Chris, what do you got? Greatest win?
Greatest win, regional championship. Again, might have touched on this in first episode, but regional championship, to go to the Division II College World Series, first time in school history.
Nice.
We played St. Thomas Aquinas, very good, obviously baseball program. Barn burner, being 11-9, but yeah, I would say probably the regional championship to go to our first ever College World Series. But I don't even know if we have to ask you, but I guess.
Oh, wait, see? Well, here's the thing. So the easy answer is this past spring. The second easy answer is the first region championship in 2014.
Okay.
But in my opinion, I think the greatest for me is winning the region in 2017. And a lot of folks thought 2014 was a fluke. And then we made the region final in 15 and 16 and got tripped up both times. But what I think when we won it in 17, it kind of made us like a legitimate program, so to speak. You win it once and you never win it again. People will think you're a fluke. And plus that group, and I hope they listen to this episode, but I really just genuinely loved being around that group. They weren't, they were really rough around the edges. I don't know if it's, appropriate for this podcast, but they're a bunch of guys that you wouldn't be surprised seeing them at the corner bar, every day once they hit the age 30 and beyond. I love those guys and just tracking them and seeing what they're doing right now with their lives. A couple of them are coaching for us. A lot of them are in jobs that pay way more than what I make right now. A heck of a lot more. And some of those kids that make that money, I didn't think they were going to make it anywhere. So, but just the layers of one, you win in the second one. It's like, yeah, we're a legit program. Helps us on the recruiting end. And on the other side, man, those kids were awesome to be around. You never really had to, it sounds weird. You didn't really have to coach them. They just knew what they had to do every time they walked into the park. And, I wish they had a shot at the national title. We fell a game short, but, seeing what they're doing now kind of makes it the greatest win. So,
right. No doubt.
Storybook. Anyway, next question. And if you need an explanation, I'll give it to you. But do you ever step on the field or step on the court and just feel completely overwhelmed or, just unsure of how it's going to go?
Yeah, that's a lot. That happens a lot. I guess for this level, it depends on how you look at teams and how you scout, right, and how you prepare. And I think that on the college level, because things change, like you can have a situation where you scout a team and you tell your players the day before or even prior to the game, this is their starting five because they've started the same five for 20 straight games. Right. And then they play you, and then we get out there and 5 different guys are starting. Like, oh boy, now what? We got to change up. So that happens a lot. It happened. I remember a game. I think it was Ocean this year at Ocean. We were talking about going big because we were going big. They went small. Like crap. What do we do here? And and then sure enough, their speed was affected because we were down early in the game. Right. So they knew, and again, that's just great scouting on their coach's part. And so then you're kind of numb, and now you have to decide now what you're going to do. And sometimes you can go to your coaches, you can ask, or sometimes you just know that a change is going to happen, and you got to think fast here. Right. And I remember, JD, with you and I at the Brookdale game last year, going back to that, and I remember you saying to me one time, or me saying to you one time in the game, because we were in a zone, I said, we might have to go man. I think we tried that, and that didn't work at all. And then we went back to a zone. But, again, sometimes you just don't know. I mean, you get out there, and you're all prepared to have your guys play a certain way. And then with that being said, now what changes now how you use your players. Now maybe you're not going with the players that you normally go with. I look at like Charles Sapp, for example, being a 6'10", it's going to be hard to play him against a lot of people who are a lot that they're running for guards. I mean, now we're in a bind, so that gets a little frustrating, but it's part of the game. It happens. It's strategy. You just got to know going in that everything is not going to be what you may think it is sometimes, and these things could happen. But you have to tell your players something. I mean, you have to prepare them somehow and let them know what may be coming their way. If it changes up, we just got to deal with it. I mean, that's it. But sometimes I'm not always 100% certain. I'll be very honest. Right. I mean, I'm human. I mean, I'm not 100% certain. And then, I look at a game against Bucks where we lost by 2 in overtime, and with the game tied, as soon as the game was over, I second guessed myself. I said maybe I should have went zone instead of man.
Right.
So, and I can't be mad at what happened and how the player scored. I have to take some accountability as well.
Right.
Maybe I should have changed up because the simple fact that they were playing man and they scored on us and they came back, to beat us is probably, on my part, not a wise decision on how we ended the game.
Sure. No, I mean, it's, I think we've all, for me, there were 2 times where I felt this way, one as a player and one as a coach. Chris, I think we've had this conversation while at St. Joe's. We played University of Miami at Miami, and you kind of think I thought we had as good of a chance as anybody. Just everything just lined up perfectly, and then you roll to the stadium, and you grow up watching them on ESPN, and you see everything that you've seen on TV. And then you look across the dugouts and you see them in their uniforms, and it's like, whoa, like we're actually going to play them, and this is going to happen. And And one of our buddies, hits a first inning home run. It was a 3-run home run. We're winning 3-0, and you kind of think like, wow, this is actually going to happen. And then they come through, and now you're in a game. Now you're in a game. So
now they have to hit.
Right. But like the thing was, like, they came back and hit, and then we scored a run in the following inning. It's like, now it's a game. You're not facing the team you saw on ESPN. You kind of realize everything's the same, and things start to calm down.
Right.
And the other one for coaching, we were in Myrtle Beach, and we're playing Triton College out of, I believe, the Chicago area. And, you don't have a chance to, at our level, you don't get that scouting report for teams that are, obviously where they were from. So you kind of just do some research on them, and you see they've got a storied history, and they roll up to the park, and, they look like an army, it's like, holy smokes. And you're just not sure how it's going to go. And our pitcher that day, Joe Zangi, who eventually became he's a step away from the bigs, was a starting pitcher, but he wasn't a pitcher yet. That was his first foray into pitching, and you kind of don't know how it goes. So those are 2 times where I just had that uneasy feeling in my stomach. Like, are you in over your head right now? So,
right.
Chris, you ever had that feeling, or you just been cool, calm, and collected all the time?
No, I wish. I think it's more of a reflection now of kind of where I'm at. I think the big difference from playing Division I my freshman year to Division II my sophomore year, I think it kind of really gave me a reflection on the really differences in levels between the two. I wouldn't say I was really overwhelmed at the time when I was a freshman playing Division I, but really taking a step back at it my sophomore year and looking at it playing Division II, and it's like, maybe I was overwhelmed at that time.
Right.
Guys are bigger than I thought they were going to be. They're faster. They're stronger. I mean, it's everything that kind of goes into playing baseball. But I don't know if it was at the time I felt overwhelmed, but taking a step back and looking at it from Division I, Division II, it probably was overwhelming for me at one time playing Division I, and I think that's probably the most potent thing that comes to my head at the time.
It's a really, really good thing you pointed out there, Chris. Thanks for sharing, man. A lot of kids, they play against, and I'm not getting on you here. I'm just saying in general, a lot of kids play against their local leagues and their local high schools, and they might be the best player out of 40 or 60 players. But the high level, NCAA schools, they're recruiting out of a pool of, let's just say 500. So
a national level.
Exactly. Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
So, alrighty, next question. I think this is going to be highly debated. The greatest sports team ever assembled, in your opinion? So who wants to go first?
Coach, you can lead this one off.
Well, so we're talking any sport, right?
Any sport.
Any sport.
Okay. I would have to go with the 72, 73, 74 Oakland A's.
Oh, wow. I thought you were going to go Steelers.
No.
Steel curtain.
Yeah, I thought you were going to go that route. The A's.
The A's, that stretch, that 3-year stretch, I think they won the World Series 3 years. They won all 3 years.
I think so, yeah.
And they were just fun to watch. I mean, they were the epitome of baseball, and they they had everything. Like, they had Hall of Famers. I mean, they had the pitching. They had 3 of the top best pitchers in the league. They had Vida Blue, Raleigh Fingers, and Catfish Hunter. I mean, they were loaded. And these guys were winning. Back then they weren't playing 162 games.
Right.
But they were winning their share of games, and you didn't really hear much about anyone else in the American League but the Oakland A's during that time. I mean, Baltimore was always good. And Detroit Tigers when I was going on. That's really it. But the Oakland A's, I mean, that lineup that they had, and Dick Williams coaching them, they were something. They were really good. I mean, I put probably the big red machine probably behind it, the Cincinnati Reds.
Right.
But the A's were something. Yeah, they were good. Yeah.
Wow. I thought you were going
talking
Steelers.
Our language there.
Yeah, I thought he was going to go Steelers. I really did.
I didn't. No.
Coach, I mean, you're going baseball. I'm going to go into your world a little bit. I think the 96 Bulls were the greatest team I've ever seen of all time. You could say that the Warriors had their 73 win season, but I'm not even getting into the 72 wins of the 96 Bulls. I mean, they had everything. Obviously, you got the one guy. But I always compare it to how the Patriots are or were, 5-6 years ago, where they could take anybody onto their team and they would get them in line. And for them to get Dennis Rodman in line for 2 seasons, three seasons. You had to be just a well-oiled machine. Now you've got MJ there, but they had everything, man. They had shooters, they had Kerr and Butler. You got Rodman, obviously. Then you got Pippen, Jordan. Ron Harper was on that team. Tony Kukoc was on that team. Like, what don't you have?
They were. It's funny, JD, because to me that organization took the necessary steps. I mean, you had MJ first, then a few years later you get Pippen,
right, and
then you add the other opponents around these two. And then when Jordan comes back, and then you bring Rodman in, what? Do you really need Rodman to win 3 more championships? I mean,
it's so crazy. And why I equated to the Patriots, I mean, if you remember when they got Randy Moss, Moss was a little bit of a problem in Minnesota towards the end there, and he becomes a model citizen for however long he was at New England. And
rings will make you do that.
Absolutely. And you hear them now, they tried to get Antonio Brown. They thought they really thought they could just take anybody they wanted in, and they're going to straighten out. And I thought that stretch, up until Jordan retired again, man, they were. But that first year when he really got his legs under him, it was absolutely just buzzsaw. So.
Nah, I don't mean to make this first take, but I literally had the 2015 to 2018 Golden State Warriors probably being the best team.
Oh boy!
I mean, ever assembled.
Boy.
We're not going to turn this into a debate show. I'm not a Golden State guy. I'm probably anti-Golden State guy. So I mean, it hurts me to say it, but I mean, you have Steph Curry, you have Andre Iguodala. I mean, you have Klay Thompson, you have Draymond. You have Sean Livingston.
The only thing I'll give the Warriors is they drafted their team. That's it.
Yes.
Other than that,
Right. You had Zaza all those years, Pachulia,
right.
and then you want to add the second best basketball player in the league, Kevin Durant, into the mix. So I mean, I would probably say Golden State. I'm a huge LeBron guy. I mean, that's why I say he's the greatest player ever, because what he did in 2016. But that'd probably be my answer.
Cool. Yeah, we can go on forever for this discussion.
Yeah.
All right. Last one here. One celebrity you wouldn't mind living with for a month in quarantine.
Oh,
who wants to start with this one?
I thought about that earlier when I saw the question earlier. I'm gonna go back to what I said earlier about Magic and Bird. I'd take them both. Like, I think you can learn a lot in a month from those guys.
Right.
You know what I mean? I think you can learn a lot, and just to hear their battles of who's better and who was better at this particular time and things like that, and just what I really wanted to know is how do they prepare for each other, because they knew, like you guys were saying earlier, like JD said earlier, like you knew every year and you didn't mind it was the Lakers or in the Celtics. Yeah. But how did you, like Bird would say, I want to play Magic, and Magic said I wanted to play Bird all the time because he knew that they were two of the best.
Right.
But how do they approach each other? You know what I mean? How do they approach how they played that long stretch? And then listen, we're going back from college all through the pros. We're talking championships. We're talking against all-star games. When all-star games were all-star games, not
alley-oop contests and dunk contests.
Exactly.
Is that where you're getting?
Yeah. I don't even watch it. I don't even watch it anymore.
So, I guess I'll go next. My one celebrity. It's gonna be a little weird. I'm a huge Pete Carroll fan. I think what's he, 63, 64 years old, and he is still motoring over there, and a lot of people will say like, hey, he's a cheater at SC and all that stuff, but man, you're the head coach at SC, you're in LA, you got Matt Leinart, Reggie Bush, all those guys. You're living the life.
Linda White.
You're living the life, man.
What's so wrong with that?
Exactly. Southern Cal, and you're winning. You're winning national championships. Yeah. And then he goes to Seattle, and whatever your opinion is, he gets Russell Wilson, and now he's got a quarterback for the next 10, 15 years. Hell yeah, really. I'm going to be in a great mood every day. So wait, I don't have to get an offensive line because I got a guy that can run circles around everybody. And throw.
And throw, I was saying, throw like a cannon. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So, I just think he's one guy that he just looks like just a great guy to be around. So, for a month, I think I can stand Pete Carroll.
Yeah, no doubt.
Chris, who you got?
So I'll go real quick. So my two, on a professional end, kind of like what you just said about Pete Carroll, mine would probably be Theo Epstein. He was the GM for the Red Sox. He ended their 86 or whatever, some odd year curse it was for them. Then he went over to be the general manager for the Chicago Cubs and ended their curse for them as well. So just a guy that knows baseball, kind of working minor league systems. And then my second would be Tiger Woods, just because that's where I'm at with my life as far as golfing. We could probably get in a couple good lessons. So those are probably my two if I had to say two.
Good stuff. Yeah. Good stuff. Well, Coach, thanks for coming on. I think we could have gone for another hour.
Easily.
But before we go, is there any shout outs that you want to have? Any messages you want to send out to anybody?
Just to all the high school seniors out there. Like I said, I know they're going through a lot with everything that we're going on in the world right now. I remember leaving school a month ago now.
Yeah.
And our seniors are about to go on their senior trip, and I have a senior class, and they were quite upset. And I said, hey, you know what? We want you guys to be healthy. I understand that this is your senior year. And, I went on a senior trip 2 years ago at Delsey High School, and it's a lot of work, but I can tell you those kids, they come together and it's so much fun. So I can understand why. And when kids come back and they talk about it, I can see why these kids, these seniors, were so willing to go. My hat's off to them. I've spoken to a few of them since we've been out of school and their email and text or whatever situation. And, just tell them keep their heads up, because I know it's a lot that you're losing, and something you will never get back.
Right.
I remember, they can even get their yearbook signed. Think about that.
Wow.
Things that you don't even think about that they would look forward to. And they probably will never have that. So, unless they sometime down the line things get better, but it means more at the moment, of course, because, we all went through it. Sure. Than it does later on. It doesn't have the same effect. So, I would hope that everything gets better. So maybe we could try to have something for them before they go off to college and things like that for a lot of them. So
great message, Coach. Again, we really do appreciate you coming on, and before we hit the stop button here, everybody, with Cumberland Athletics, we just want to thank everybody from the healthcare industry to the food service industry, and everything in between, all the folks that are keeping the engine running. We just want to thank you, and we want to double down on Coach Stalling's message, to all the high school seniors and everybody that's really broken up about what's going on. Definitely keep your head up and reach out to those you trust and love the most. Doesn't have to be a parent or a relative. It could be a coach or a teacher. Reach out and, definitely share your feelings and, definitely seek the help that you need. So, Chris,
I agree.
If you don't have anything, Chris?
No, I think you guys covered everything.
Great. Again, thank you everybody for listening, and we will see you next time.